today. It's now mid-July. We've been running these innovation meetups since January, so it's very exciting that we're getting a packed room once a month here. Innovation meetup is all about adding value to you as a business, so we're offering you an insight and just a sort of tip in the ocean of an element of business which you may not know about. Hopefully people are here to learn about, or you're already winning business in the public sector. We've got some experts in Ian and Terri. Terri's over there, she'll be speaking in a little while, who will offer you some advice on how to win business in the public sector. Over to you.
Thanks, Saffron. The format of today will go, I'll do 10 minutes, then Terri will do 10 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session. Hopefully to get you to a point where you sort of think, okay, maybe I can start approaching some of these challenges slightly differently when you're looking for public sector business and trying to win public sector business. I will give you a quick, I will say very quickly that we run two websites, spendnetwork.com and openops.com, both of which might be useful to you when you're looking for public sector business. Openops.com has got all the tender notices, and you can sign up for free to receive some tender alerts. And we've got way more than Contracts Finder in terms of UK tender opportunities. Spend Network is spend analysis for every UK public body that publishes their spend. That's the end of the sales routine, but I need you to know where we're coming from, because otherwise you're going to go, what's this guy selling? So I just told you. This was research completed that we did in 2014, but it's still valid today. We are the third slowest country in Europe to process ODU tenders, so higher value tenders. Ireland's missing from there, although they're pretty much parallel with us now. The average is Germany at 124, the fastest is Thailand at 71. So we take 175 days. We do it really slowly. That's something you all probably know about the public sector, but it's something you have to be worried about and you have to be aware of. That said, when you do win the contracts, actually they're longer, more valuable contracts. So the thing that government doesn't do is one night stand. You can't just turn up and go, hi, we're great, give us some of your business, and expect to be treated respectfully. You need to know that you're forming a long-term partnership, and that's why they're so awkward, right? That's why it's really hard work. This guy over here talked about being 3 years of accounts. Well, the reason they're doing that is because they want to form long partnerships. The problem is they don't want to form long partnerships with thousands and thousands of suppliers. They want to do it with a few, typically. So we've got to make sure that when you're approaching government, you're doing it in the right way. So, what are you selling? Someone give me an example. What are you guys selling?
IT services.
IT services. Anyone else?
Recruitment.
Recruitment. Okay. Both tough, aren't they, to sell into public sector because they want to. You're not called Capgemini, I assume.
G-Cloud.
G-Cloud. Yeah. G-Cloud's are really interesting. I'll get on to G-Cloud in a minute. But recruitment, you're not commensurate, right? Or matrix, and that can be hard as well. So the thing is, you have to know exactly what you're selling, but you also have to know your market. So where else is recruitment going in your market? What's happening with IT services, and how you might access the market. How are you approaching your targets at the moment, sir?
At the moment, I've actually decided not to submit because it's too much hard work.
Too much hard work, okay. And yourself?
Just getting the business out there. It's relatively young, so going to clients. We just have one big client at the moment.
Yeah.
And everything is organic, so we're building it from scratch.
Okay. So what tends to happen if you're in government and you're sat there and you're in the procurement team, you're going to get about, if you've got a reasonable sized budget, so anything over 50 million, 60 million, you're going to get about 20 calls a week from suppliers saying, I can save you money. Can you spare me half an hour I'll buy you coffee and we want to go through this. Now at the same time, this guy's got to get probably something in the region of 100 tenders out that year. He's got to produce them, get them out, get them marked, get the rest of his colleagues to sign off on it, do all of that, and then probably have their staff cut as well. So what chance have you got when you just go, you're one of 20 suppliers going, can I help save you money? He's like, of course everyone says that. He or she is going to find it really tough to give you the time that they would like to give you. Most of them would like to give you the time. They're going to find it really tough to give you that time because they've got a day job, which is actually getting the tenders up and running, the contracts sorted. So you need to do your preparation. And this is the most important element, I think, of how you work in the public sector. Because the public sector is different from every other business in that they've given you all the information you know and need on how to work with them. They've already made it available. So they get a bit churlish if you don't go and look for that information in advance. And I know people will say, well, look, actually, surely they have a responsibility to talk to us. Perhaps you're a local business, something like that. Actually, the only time they have a real responsibility to engage with you is when they issue a tender and you submit a bid, and when you ask for feedback on the marks of that bid. That's when they absolutely have to engage with you. They want to engage with everyone. They do supply meetings and all the rest of it, but they're time limited. So you need to make it easier for them. You need to know your offer. Now, IT services might be a very broad range spectrum for them. Recruitment might be a very broad range spectrum for them. So you need to be able to go in with a very specific way of solving the problems that they face. So I'm thinking an example in recruitment might be that they've had problems with their waste contractor and they've not been able to staff their waste contract properly. That would have possibly come out, that might be public knowledge, in which case then you have a very specialised approach. So you have to go out solving problems for them. And that means you have to know your targets, but also what their strategies are, who their existing suppliers are, their personnel, their targets. So what targets have they got in their business, and their partners that they might be working with. So in London, Hammersmith and Fulham and Kensington and Chelsea work very closely together. They have shared systems. They do a lot of sharing. You've got to know all of that information. The best thing about it is that it's all readily available. Every single piece of that information is on their website already. So when you turn up and say, I can save you money, they go, but if you turn up and say, I know that you failed to deliver this because of this, and we have a solution that will stop that happening again. I don't know how much that costs you, but it could be in the range of this. Can we have a conversation? You're more likely to get a response. Whizzing through, remember the 3 Ps, policy, policy, and policy. Every democratic organisation has response to a policy. So whether it's central government or local government, in the NHS it's cascaded down from the Department of Health, they have policies. It is unforgivable in anyone in the public sector's mind to not know the policies that are guiding that person's work. If you don't know the policies that are concerning them, whether it's digital or whether it's anything to do with waste or clean water or whatever, if you don't know the government policy and the local policy, then you're just doing yourself a disservice. Go and find out. The cabinet minutes for local councils are freely available, so you should be able to determine exactly what the guiding policies are. find a hook. That's not me being overtly cynical. If there's a problem that they're facing, they will be looking for a solution. And there isn't a local authority or a central government department that doesn't want to work with a small business. But you need to solve the problem. And then prepare proof that you can deliver. So you understand the policy, you understand the hook, your sale, your problem solving, then you need to prepare proof that you can deliver. That's much harder to say than you think. But basically that's case studies, either references to standards or authentication that you've got, references from other sites, or research. Now, if you can afford it, you might choose to do a cut-down version of something for free, but you need to be careful about that, because you do all the work and then it goes to tender and someone else gets it. You can't avoid the tender. Anyone here thinks that they can get around tendering? Can't. It's really very difficult to do. To avoid that, people are very mindful that their careers are at stake if they try to do that. Once you've got that data available, or that information available, that accreditation, you can make a public statement, put up a blog, do a press release, post your case studies, and then when you're ready, and only then, you can approach your target. And just say, we think we've got a point here that might be useful to you. Are we relevant? Not can I have 20 minutes of your time? Does this seem relevant to you? Because if it is relevant, then they'll start the conversation. If it isn't relevant, they'll either say, yes, have a meeting to find out more, or they'll say, no, in which case you've got to go back and do some more research, find some more stuff. If you get to the meeting, you need to prep very specific materials for that meeting. There should be no doubt, because you might get one meeting with one person, but I guarantee to you, before you get anywhere near a tender or a contract or anything else, they'll have to have conversations with 3 or 4 other people. So you need to prepare a handout so that you can put it in their hands to say, look, this is what we're proposing, this is the problem that I think we have, this is how we would solve it. And so they can share that with their other colleagues. And have a clear next step for them. That clear next step should not be sign this contract. A clear next step might be sign up for our 14-day free trial, have a workshop, a free workshop where we can scope out how we might help you in your project, or if you've got a recruitment service, it might be, how about we send you some candidates? So there's some stuff that you can do, an approach that you can do that keeps the engagement going. Always solve a problem. Take them away and solve that problem. Now, you might have done a really useful workshop that got no fees and it didn't lead to a tender, but they're never going to hate you for that. Because you took the time to be relevant to them first and you helped them with their project. That's the risk you take. So look for that quick way to prove yourself prior to a tender, or whilst or if a tender's going on, everything's shut out. You can't do any of this. If a tender's going on, you can't do any of this. But you might just look to provide proof that you need from someone else. So you might work with Lambeth in order to bid better on a tendering project. So if you do some work with Lambeth that proves you're good, it's relevant again when you take it across to another tender. And step by step, move yourselves towards a spec and a tender. If they haven't laid out a requirement, move yourselves towards that requirement. Try and influence what's going on prior to the tender. And never, ever, ever lose sight of why you're doing this for them and why you can help solve their problems. So this is, at this point, I just move on to some some research we did. And you mentioned small companies and that problem of having 3 years of accounts. This is some analysis we did. So small companies and how much business they do with government at 0 years, 1 year, and 2 years, it's virtually nothing. You really have to get beyond 3 years to see it grow. That is changing. So over time, more younger companies are coming into government, but it is hard. So it's better to engage with people and say, look, hold up, before we go any further, you need to know this about us. Does that put us out of the reckoning? Quite important point. Spend by sector and age. So how much, so you might imagine that central government spends much more with small companies than local government because they've got budget nearly 20 times bigger, but they don't. It's local government that spends much more with small companies. They have a need that is much more local. They have needs around kind of where the rubber hits the road. If you want, like looking after clients, there's a lot of spend in local government that can be directed to small companies. Much harder at a departmental level, which is national. So, you know, a small local company, a local recruitment agency would find it very hard to serve a national-based government organisation. It is getting better, but it is a problem for central government. This is Capita, and they're now overtaking. Their spend in central government is larger than their local government spend. A lot of people go, oh God, Capita. You know, actually, the reason this slide is here is there are subcontracting opportunities. You might be really, really capable, but actually it doesn't work. You're never going to win the tender. Maybe it's because you don't have enough accounts, or the contract is too broad. Still look for subcontracting opportunities, and be aware that you can contact your council and say, look, I don't want to bid on this tender, I want to subcontract on it. Would you be willing to represent us back to whoever wins the tender? Now, you still have to do all the work on relevancy, otherwise it's just someone throwing an email out there. But actually, if you do that, you might get some traction. Local government spend with small companies, it still exceeds, this was from 2014, but it still exceeds the amount spent with the 20 largest companies, but it's hard. So those are the 20 large opportunities as a subcontractor are almost as big as the whole of the direct spend with small businesses. So really look for subcontracting opportunities as well. The bad news is that direct spend with small companies is going down. However, there is real efforts in the government at the moment to reverse that. And this isn't medium companies, it's only small companies defined by Companies House. I wouldn't let that put you off too much, but you've got to know that you're in a dogfight, and you've really got to solve problems. This is about how actually even the big companies are struggling. So some of them are getting more, so you can see actually the movement is towards fewer larger companies. That said, it's a diverse and dynamic market, and I'd encourage you all to use it. If you're in the tech space, G-Cloud that you mentioned earlier is a very good vehicle for engaging with government. It's the best framework for small companies to use, and there is a lot of interest in using smaller companies around IT and technology. We'll do questions at the end if that's okay. Let me change your slides.
While he's changing the slides, just to introduce myself, I'm Terri from Wanless. Our company typically works with clients, including public sector clients, to help them run tenders from start to finish with the niche that we're looking to help them save money. It's always hot on everyone's agenda, I guess. seeing it from the other side might help you. Oh, that's cool. Without the rest of the word, really.
Who knows? Who knows? It's because it's decided to be a Mac.
It is a Mac. If you want just to make that larger, that'll be okay.
Got a clever plan.
Okay.
While you're working that out, is there anyone in the room who is subcontracting to larger organisations with spending local government? Anyone here? Tendering? At the moment? No?
We're doing some work with Wanless Council at the moment.
Okay, so did you tend to that? Did you apply for the tender yourself, or did you you part of a
I'm part of a sort of slightly bigger group that did it. It's a tiny contract. It's sort of 50 grand or something. But yeah, so I'm part of a bigger group that went direct.
And where did you find the opportunity? Did you find it, or you approached?
We were approached.
Excellent. So you had your website in the right place. Nigel?
So I haven't done it recently, but maybe a few years ago. So for a workshop, so I didn't run it specifically for the public sector, but the way we did it was we created a workshop and we released places, basically delegate spots to the workshop, and then the council that we're working with just bought all the seats. And so I don't know if that was like bending a rule. Like, to be honest, it didn't occur to me at the time, but that was how we kind of ran a council workshop. I don't know if this was years ago, but
That's in the middle of a tender, it's fine.
Yeah, as long as you're not actually post tender notice going out, then that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And it's the sort of thing that is a really good way of engaging with public sector, because they want to feel confident that you're going to be able to deliver. So that try before you buy and that sort of nervousness about bringing in small companies is really important to them.
and it was really easy because basically they just put their credit card in and they just did the transaction like anyone here would buy a workshop, I guess, if we were working together. So that was an easy way of engaging a bunch of them at once.
Does everyone know about the procurement regs? Sorry, Terry.
It's okay.
The thresholds.
It's up there.
There you go. Well, I'll let you.
Stealing my thunder. Sorry, what I should add actually is that I used to work for Croydon Council, so I was a procurement officer for Croydon, I was a procurement officer for Merton, category manager for Camden, and then I moved over to the dark side procurement, which is helping people from the outside and going inwards. I have worked central government, education, people like the OGC or whatever they're called these days.
Crown Commercial
Services, treasury, some defence guys. So yeah, and they'll have to observe these thresholds as Ian referred to. It makes life a little bit difficult, I guess, for public sector, because on one hand they're told they need to spend £1 in every £3 with local businesses, and on the other hand they're told they can't circumvent the regulations, and if collectively they're spending that amount of money on supplies or works or whatever over a period of time, what they call a contract period, which could be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. If they're spending in excess of that, they have to follow the regulations. They can't break things down into smaller packages because it is actually against the regs. So it kind of makes it very difficult for them because they've got conflicting priorities. So the subcontracting approach is a good one to take. If you want to know who is currently supplying a contract to your local government, I'd suggest that you look at the, it's actually on the next slide, look at the council website. They should have a contracts register. Ian and I know that it's not the best, so if you can't find what you're looking for, do a freedom of information request to the council, ask them who the contract is with, when it started, when it's going to expire, and what the value is. They'll release that amount of information. They've never released anything commercially confidential, like what price you submitted, what price you submitted, anything like that. So it's just the total contract value, can take quite a long time to get through these processes. So, oh, gone off again.
Sorry.
Doesn't like me, does it, today? Really doesn't like me. So that's talking about overdue, which are very large contracts, typically in excess of about £165,000 per contract value. Again, that could be up to 4 years. If you divide by 4, an annual value isn't much really for it to fall into that threshold. But below that, there's some constitutional obligations for each of those authorities. It will change from one authority to another, so you will need to do your homework and look at, if it is Croydon Council, go and have a look at their tentative contract regulations. It's on their website, it's a constitution, it's available. But it will be, if it's very low value, say below 25,000 as an example, they might only look at 3 quotes, and they can do that with local businesses. But it is really good that they know who you are, because sometimes they don't know, they might think, wow, I've got this requirement for a particular HR need, it's falling outside of the main contract. Who might be able to do that? So it still is very good to tell them who you are, what you're about, because if it does fall below the sort of 3 quotes threshold, they've got some names saved up somewhere, they might keep it in a file, and there is an opportunity there for you to get that. But over that, then it still tends to go to open tendering, which means anybody can apply. They'll probably put an advert on their website, or they might put it out through their own tender portal. It might not hit the threshold, but it will still require open tendering, so it's free and fair. And the point of that is that that there is transparency and there's no discrimination to anybody. Anybody can apply as long as you meet the criteria. There's 2 common OG procedures that happen in public sector. There are more, but the most common ones are an open process and a restricted process. And they differ in the sense that an open process only has 1 stage. So you'll get the questionnaire, and you'll be asked to submit all of the basic business stuff that you do, like your accounts and your health and safety policies and environment policies. But you'll also be asked to submit responses to some method statements, probably, to demonstrate how you can deliver the service or the products or anything that goes with it, and then your price, and it all gets bundled up together. And it's not used very often, only for the fact that if you could imagine 100 people applying for that, that's a hell of a lot of resource that the government needs to use in order to analyse every single one of them, because everybody deserves exactly the same chance as everyone else, and that can take quite a long time. So it does happen, but it tends to happen in markets that aren't very big. They're only expecting maybe 20 responses. And then if you go into a restricted one, there's a 2-stage process. They'll do a pre-qualification questionnaire. You've probably heard that a million times, the whole PQQ. They use it as a way to shortlist, I guess. So if you do have 100 PQQs, the chances are they're only going to invite 20 or so to the actual tender. But anything you're evaluated on at PQQ stage, so they are asking you for your finances, and they're asking for references and all those sorts of things. Once you're past the PQQ stage, they can never go back and reevaluate that same criteria. So you've got, once you're at that stage, you can win it based on price and non-price considerations. Quite often, more often than not, they'll use an approach called MEET, which is the most economically advantageous tender. They won't focus solely on price. Again, that's kind of a legislative thing. There's no legislation to say it must be 70-30, 80-20. There's nothing there to say that, but they will expect government bodies to demonstrate best value, and that isn't just about price, as you and I know. And a lot of people think that it is just about price, but it isn't. Really do look at what the weightings are, because it's quite important. Frameworks, I've put that on there because it's quite easy to become a framework provider, especially if it's a multi-operator one. So if you do see a contract and it is £160,000 worth, have a look and see if they've actually put it down to framework where you've got multiple operators, because potentially you'd only get a portion of that business, which might suit you better if your turnover is not that high. Because that's one of the problems, I guess, with local businesses, is that your turnover's not even the size of the contract, and that's going to sort of rule you out. So that's one thing to bear in mind. Okay, so next one. How to construct a bid. So first and foremost, where to look. Ian's covered some of that. I've already mentioned, look at the council's tendering portal. I think like 90% of them now are using e-tendering portals of some description, and unfortunately for you, Most of London are using the same, I think. A lot of them are using due north, I think. So London is fairly.
But you'll be able to get them all at Open Ops.
You will be able to, which is why I put that up there. Or you can look at Open Ops. You know, it's a great place to look. Again, I mentioned earlier, look at the council's contract registers. If you don't, if it's not there, ask, do an FOI request. So you are now in a position where you can tender. You've seen the advert and you want to apply. The important thing is that you prepare. Ian touched on this a little bit in his presentation, but in terms of the preparation I'm referring to, it's actually when the tender's out rather than before the tender. You know, you need to make sure that you understand what it is that they're looking for. You know, because I'm guilty of it myself. I've seen a tender and I put it and I thought, great, I'm going to apply for that. And I put some time aside, and then once I've actually read through it, I realised actually I can't do some of this stuff, and I've wasted a bit of time. You know, because I've started filling it all in, and then I've got to, you know, 2/3 of the way through and realised I've just wasted that time. So really do read it and make sure that you can do exactly what it is that they're looking for before you invest the time. But once you can do that, make sure you do invest the time. Look at the deadlines. So, you know, another silly thing is that you think, oh, the deadline's not for 5 weeks. I'll do it in 3 weeks' time. And then when you're reading through it, you've got some questions and you've missed the Q&A deadline. There'll always be a table in the document that says these are the key timelines. So make sure you take a note of them, put them in the Outlook calendar, just so that you don't forget. And, you know, make sure you invest the time, schedule that in your diary. And right at the very end, don't forget to allow some time to polish it. You know, someone will need to proofread it, so allow that time. Check again that the answer that you're giving, you know, answers the question. I know it's a very silly thing to say, but quite often we are so excited about what we do and we write it all down and we're telling everyone how wonderful we are, but it actually doesn't answer the question. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to look back. So I would suggest that you use highlighters, pick out the keywords in the question. You know, if it's something like strategy or whatever, make sure that your answer is relevant to the question that's being asked. And to enable it to be easier for you in future, I would recommend that you save a bank of generic questions and answers, that the next tender you apply for won't be quite so onerous the first time. You'll improve upon them. And do make use of the Q&A phase. No question is a stupid question. It might seem stupid to you, but don't worry about that. They'll never say that it was, you know, you from this supplier over here that asked that question. They're not going to name and shame you, but it could actually mean that someone else was thinking the same thing. They'll issue a Q&A document, and you're all bidding on the same basis. So don't ever be afraid of that. You have to want to win it. It sounds really silly, but think of it like a job application. You know, if you were applying for a job, what would you do? You'd sell yourself. That's exactly what we'd do. Or again, if you want to think of it a different way, try and think of it as competition. Surely you want to win. So that's the attitude you need to have when you're applying for the tender. You know, word your response to solve their problem. Ian mentioned that a little bit on his brief, but when you're reading your answers back, make sure that it's not saying, we're this, we're that, we're wonderful. You need to word it in a way that says, this is how we can do this for you, and this is how we've done things for other people. So you're putting the client as the priority rather than you as the supplier. And that's really quite key in terms of getting a good score on your responses. You know, sell the solution. What is making you different? What is it that you do that is better than your competitor? And you need to understand that yourself anyway, and make sure you sell yourself. Again, don't just focus on price. So look at the weightings. Imagine it being an exam. If you went into an exam and one of the questions was worth 50%, you'd need to give most of your time to the question that was worth 50%. So don't focus on price if it's only worth 20%. It is important, everything's important, but your emphasis must be on the ones that have got the highest possible percentage, because that's what's going to make you win. When they do a meets tender, it's a combination of cost and non-cost considerations, and your aim is to get the highest percentage wins. So you know, you need to invest in that. You know, demonstrate your compliance. Again, you know, put case studies in there if you have to. Some testimonials if it's about people, maybe put some CVs in. But one thing to bear in mind there is that you need to be truthful. Don't try to say something that you can't do. So an example would be, we need you to have 10 million insurance of X, and you don't have it. Be truthful, say I've only got 5 million, however, should I be successful in winning this contract, I will increase the cover to 10 million, and understand the financial implications of that to your business before you put your price in, just so that you're covered. Make sure that you display it clearly. You know, it seems really silly, but it's quite hard for someone to look at 20 responses that's all blocked out with no paragraphs or headings or you know, no space. It's actually a lot easier for the person evaluating that to pick the right parts out of the response if you've broken it down into smaller pieces. Don't ever refer to corporate literature, because it's really, really difficult. If you say, oh, please refer to our financial statement, which is 27 pages long, and the person's got to go through it and try and find that one thing, it's actually better if you go to it, copy it out and paste the relevant part of the answer. Again, ask someone to proofread it. Seems really silly. We all make mistakes. I still make mistakes. I have to get my colleague Angela to check my documents on a weekly basis. We oversee things. It's human. So make sure someone does that and take that, you know, feedback constructively, because it's really important that you want to, you know, be the best. And at the end of it, if you aren't successful, which I hope that isn't the case, but there is only one winner, make sure you ask for feedback, because it's really important. Don't you know, throw toys out the pram and say, oh my god, I haven't won. Try and find out why you haven't won, because it will help you next time to be better and improve. And yeah, learn from it, basically. That's pretty much it from me. Has anyone got any questions?
So.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to ask, because you talking about portals, I actually don't know what that means.
It's basically a website where the council will publish their tender notices, but they'll pay for some software. So it's a portal in that sense, because they're using a license in order to do that.
Yeah.
It will be, if you go to any council website and type in procurement, be directed to their page, and there'll be a link to their portal there.
The challenge with portals is that they group a bunch of people together. So there's the London Tender portal.
Yeah.
So the London tenders for councils are there. But then there's another portal for the NHS and another portal for central government, which is, and then there's also Contracts Finder, but that's not complete either. So we're actually, I would say this, we have that Open Opps is the most complete place to go and get your tender information.
Because there was a job as a tech table one, because somebody, I recently had the word portal in relation to a school website, so
yeah, exactly. So portals are everywhere. It's not a very useful way of describing just a website, but that's all it is.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to say one thing from Terry. You mentioned don't do cross-referencing. Cross-referencing in tenders, just one very quick thing, really, really bad idea. So if you've answered one question before, and then you say, see my answer to question 7, you may find yourself in trouble, because 2 different people may be evaluating different bits of the tender, and they won't have reference to question 7. So that's just a point of, sorry.
I was just going to mention about Open Opps. So when a company would register, I don't know, a cleaning company, for instance, would register themselves on a London portal.
Yeah.
You're saying now, if we register on Open Opps, we're going to get a more opportunity. We'll get emails to let us know.
Yeah. So you get free alerts. You get 1 free alert a day for your searches. If you give us £1 a day, you get a more complex search, so you can narrow your searches down a little bit, and that will and you'll get a better service basically in terms of the quality of the email and those sort of things. But it's free for everyone to use, so anyone can come along and just look for cleaning contracts or recruitment or IT services and see who's out in the market looking for those things. Does everything in the UK plus beyond, so Europe and America and other places too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Saffron.
Yeah, each of you will have a sort of CPD classification to what services or goods you provide. So once you put that into the portal or into Open Opps, it will alert you every time somebody releases a tender that's linked to your classification.
We do better
Yeah.
than that. So we do. So it's a bit more like Google. What you search for is what you get back. Anyway, sorry.
Yes, I'd heard kind of anecdotally that public sector contracts tend to start at a business turnover of 250,000 or above. Is that the case?
No, I don't
No.
think that's true at all.
Okay.
I think there is a feeling that certainly in public sector that they need to address the way that quite often they were excluding smaller companies, and so that some of these thresholds have come away. Where you will see it is difficult is perhaps with things like construction or care placement, when actually there are safety requirements or compliance requirements, and if you haven't got a certain amount of compliance organised, it will be difficult to get in. If you want a long-term contract and you haven't got a trading history, they might ask to see your bank account to prove that you've got enough money to trade for certainly the major part of that contract. So there are those kind of issues, but typically turnover has gone away as a threshold.
It's actually, I think it's more relative to the size of the contract as well. So imagine a contract is worth 100,000 and it's for 4 years, so it's 25,000 a year. What they're going to look at is whether or not you would be, it'd be more than half of your turnover, for example. You wouldn't look to award to a company that, if you were only turning over 25 at the moment, that would be a risk for them. Unless you've got a good strategy to deliver that, of course. But equally, I mean, you couldn't say 250 was a good threshold if the contract's worth 5 million, because it would put them off. So it's relative to the size of the contract, really. Just think about not being worth more than 50% of it as your current turnover, and I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And if you don't have 3 years accounts, sorry, I just want to add to that. Please put your business plans in as well. Anything from your accountant that might back that up, bank statements, all of those things will be taken into consideration if it's not 3 years worth of accounts.
But better if you can to get in advance.
Absolutely.
So you had a question.
Yeah, do you think inbound marketing helps, like the hits you see on your website? Do you think they have much relevance, or they're worth tracking?
The hits that you see from your website and whether they come from customers.
Well, you can see they come from, we get some from, say, Norfolk County Council, Salford, universities. Over time we obviously track to see how many times they need that. But do you think those sort of authorities are doing more searching on the internet to look for potential suppliers?
I think they are. They're looking for solutions to problems quite often.
Yeah.
The difficulty is that one person in Norfolk
could be anyone,
looking at your website does not mean it was the procurement manager, head of procurement, or the person in the service who's responsible for signing off the contract. So
it's likely to be the person who's got the problem.
Yeah, it is likely to be the person who's got the problem, but don't assume that person actually has communicated that you might be the solution.
Anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly. So actually we use something on our site called Intercom, which is a plugin you can add to any website, and it allows you, if you to put up a little chat box at the bottom left right hand corner of the website, and we can track people coming into the website, and if they look like an interesting target, we go, hello, what's going, can we help you with anything? That might be a useful way that you can try and find out what their needs are. But I would suspect you need to know a little bit more information before knocking directly on their door afterwards.
Quite often they'll do market testing as well, which is why they're looking at your websites and other suppliers' websites if they're trying to gather a good business case to tender something in the first place.
Yeah, we're trying to put solutions on as opposed to products, So I'm assuming it's that sort of person who's kind of got a problem who's looking for something.
Another thing to consider though, just non-procurement websites, is having some resources on there, some white papers, downloads, whatever it is that you think is relevant. And in order for them to get it, they just have to put their email address in.
Case studies.
Email address to access that site. And then you know who it is that's looking.
Deeper into the website to get more information.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask about subcontracting.
Yeah.
You should say that a lot of small businesses more than likely would get subcontracts as opposed to big contracts.
Yeah.
How would you go about finding out Is there like something on the portal that tells you, or would you have to?
So, the back end, there is so on the first place I'd go is your local authority.
Okay.
Because you have value to them as a local employer.
Okay.
So that's the first place I would look in terms of subcontracting. Go to their website, look for the contracts, register, and you will see who's currently in contract. But the thing I would say is that actually when you get to a tender, that's when someone said, you know, we've got in the next 6 months we're going to be requiring a new provision for rock salt or recruitment. Terri and I years ago worked on a rock salt tender, or recruitment or IT services, and then you can say, look, to the council, the first thing I would say is, I'm not going to bid on this, we're not going to meet the requirements, but I would like to be considered as a subcontractor. The problem you're going to have is to get past that threshold of getting their attention, is you need to go to them with a credible reason why they should recommend you as a subcontractor to the winning bidder.
But look at who's currently supplying them as well, because it's a good anchor. If it is the likes of Capita or whoever, you know, they're a good place to start. Because they'll have to report ultimately to the council the local statistics. The council basically pass on some of the responsibility to the supplier to report on certain things like, you know, local labour and all those sorts of things. So it is in their interest, of course, to have local labour. Quite often they will subcontract. The large ones will anyway.
Yeah. So, and it's also a very good way of getting the council to, you know, you're being responsible to them, because the fact is that you recognise that their needs are going to be greater than you can provide. That's bliss for a procurement manager who's quite often confronted with people saying, why didn't I win that contract? I live here. And he goes, well, it's not like that. We can't do that. It's against EU law. But actually, at the subcontracting level, they can have, bizarrely, more influence than they can at a direct contracting level. Any more questions?
Wonderful. And Ian, do you want to tell everybody about your next workshop?
Yes, that was on the 8th of September, breakfast meetup. There's a little pamphlet on your tables. We're going to have the small business Crown Rep, the SME Crown Rep, the newly appointed Emma Jones, who is responsible for making sure that government buys more from people like you. She's coming along, and then also the ex-head of procurement from the Olympics from London 2012, and he's going to tell it. And he was also head of procurement at the Ministry of Justice. And he can tell you a little bit about his experience of working with small suppliers and how you might go about winning more business in the public sector.
So thank you very much, Ian. A round of applause, I think, for Ian and Terri. So that's the breakfast meeting on September the 8th, and it's open to everybody to attend. Please, there's leaflets around, so register for that. We do have lots of events here. We're trying to add value to the business community here. So if you're not on my mailing list, speak to me afterwards. We've got different things like a spine clinic, making sure we're all sitting properly. We've got Coast to Capital coming up soon, talking about grants which are available for, especially if you're buying furniture, capital grants. So that's a grant which should be the deadline at the end of September. So we're running a clinic here on the 4th of August. As of many different events. We'll be over at Croydon Tech City tomorrow night. If you're interested in hearing more about that, speak to myself or Nigel, who's sitting over there. Lots going on in Croydon, and it's great to see so many people here today. Ian and Terri will be around for questions. Otherwise, if you have to get back to work, please do. I will be, and I shall see you next month.
Thank you. Thank you.
Am I getting you on? Turn this thing on.
A lot to do.
I can't work out if it's turned off or not.
What is that?
Swipe down to stop.